You see, the great cosmic joke is this: you always get what you want, but not necessarily what you think you want. Because there's a difference, you know, between the desires rattling in your head and the silent yearning of your soul. Most people imagine wanting as this desperate grasping. I want money. I want love. I want peace of mind. But they overlook the deeper truth that desire is not something you have, it's something the universe is doing through you. You are not a spectator of your wants, you are them. And so when you chase after things, when you run and run and run, what you find is not the object of desire, but the experience of running. Because that's what you actually wanted, to chase, to seek, to hunger. But once you get tired, once you finally stop and say, what am I really doing? That's when the truth begins to unfold. Because life, you see, is not misbehaving. It's listening, it's mirroring, not your words, not your social media mantras, but your state of being. If deep down you feel unworthy, you'll attract experiences that validate that belief. If you live in a world of lack, you will find lack even in abundance. But when you begin to trust, really trust, that what's unfolding is not punishment but fulfillment, then you realize something strange. You've always gotten exactly what you wanted. Even the heartbreak, even the failure, even the confusion. They were all answers to prayers you didn't know you were making. Because underneath all the specifics, money, lovers, success, what you really wanted was a feeling, a vibration, a return to yourself. And that was never out of reach, only out of awareness. Most people treat desire as though it's some sort of intrusion upon life, as though wanting is something artificial, something we inject into the world. We're taught, often subtly, that we must control our desires, suppress them, or at least keep them in check. But this entire notion rests on a false division, one that separates you from the universe, the inside from the outside, the observer from the observed. And once you see through that illusion, something astonishing becomes clear. Your desires are not external to reality. They are not arbitrary forces pushing against the fabric of the world. They are the fabric of the world, folding itself into form through you. You are not standing outside life, looking in. You are not some creature crawling along the surface of a planet, trying to impose your will onto an indifferent cosmos. You are the cosmos, expressing itself as a human being. And just as a tree produces leaves, just as a volcano erupts lava, you produce desires. That's not a mistake. That's the process of reality becoming aware of itself, longing, reaching, shifting, dreaming. So when you feel desire stir within you, do not immediately categorize it as selfish, silly, or dangerous. Instead, look at it with curiosity. Ask yourself, what is it that life is trying to become through me? This shift in perspective changes everything. Because now, desire is not a sign of your incompleteness, it is the movement of completeness exploring new forms. When a wave curls upon the ocean, we do not criticize it for being too ambitious. We do not ask it to settle down, or tell it it's too much. The wave is simply what the ocean is doing in that moment. And in the same way, desire is what you, as a living expression of the universe, are doing. It is not separate from reality, it is reality moving through the contours of your heart, your thoughts, your longing. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop fighting your desires, the moment you stop trying to wrestle them into submission or justify them through logic, they start to change. Not because you've controlled them, but because you've understood them. You've given them space to breathe. You've allowed them to unfold without shame. Most people think desire is dangerous because they only ever experience it in its repressed, distorted form. They feel the ache of wanting, but never the clarity of being with that want fully. They confuse craving with connection. But desire in its pure form is not about clinging, it's about becoming. There's a quiet intelligence behind your longing, a wisdom that whispers, there's more to you than what you've known. And every desire you've ever felt, whether for love, freedom, peace, or passion, has been life moving forward, gently asking you to wake up, to remember what you are. You see, reality is not a static object out there in the distance. It is alive. It is changing. And it responds to the depth of your being. The more fully you inhabit your truth, the more clearly the world reflects the truth back to you. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with the pattern of your own nature. Desire is not the problem. The problem is forgetting who the desirer really is. You think you are a little self rattling around in a vast world. But you are the vast world, pretending to be a little self. And in this cosmic game of hide and seek, desire is the thread that leads you back home. It lures you toward growth. It entices you toward experiences you didn't even know you needed. And sometimes It even leads you into pain, not to punish you, but to purify the illusion that something outside of you could ever complete you. Look closely and you'll see that desire isn't about getting, it's about revealing. It shows you what you believe, what you fear, what you think you lack. And once you bring those beliefs into the light, the grip of desire loosens. Not because you have less of it, but because you no longer misunderstand it. You no longer need to manipulate life to feel whole. You begin to sense that the feeling you were chasing was never tied to a particular outcome. It was a pointer, a symbol, a call to presence. When you grasp this, when you begin to live from this deeper place, you realize you've never really had a desire that wasn't already being fulfilled in some way. Even your frustrations were perfect reflections of internal conflicts, echoing through experience until you paid attention. Life has never denied you. It has only ever mirrored you. And the more intimately you come to know yourself, not just the surface self, but the deep, abiding stillness underneath, the more your desires become clear, peaceful, even joyful. Desire in this way becomes not a cry of lack, but a song of becoming. It is not the enemy of presence, it is the pathway into it. For when you stop resisting what you want, you start seeing what you are. You are not here to escape desire. You are here to understand it, to feel it, to watch it transform from a flicker of longing into a flame of knowing. And in that flame, reality does not burn, it shines. Wanting and resisting are two sides of the same coin. It's a curious thing, isn't it? That we often believe ourselves to be chasing something desperately, fervently, perhaps even obsessively, yet underneath, that very chase is a quiet persistence to the thing itself. We think of desire as a clean forward motion, a singular yearning for something that we do not yet have. But more often than not, our desires are knotted up with fear, doubt, guilt, and all sorts of unconscious conditions. And so we find ourselves in a peculiar dance, moving toward what we want while at the same time pulling away from it. You say you want love, but if love came knocking at your door today, real, deep, vulnerable love, would you open that door without hesitation? Would you let it see you fully? Or would some part of you shrink, hide, sabotage, or question its authenticity? You say you want success, but do you allow yourself to step into that success completely, or do you quietly cling to patterns of procrastination, of self-doubt, of guilt about leaving others behind? You see, the mind plays a double game. It longs, but it also resists, and both are happening simultaneously. Wanting pulls us forward, but resistance digs in its heels. And in this tug of war, what you often experience is not progress, but frustration. You keep setting goals, dreaming big, visualizing outcomes, and wondering why things aren't moving. But it isn't the universe that's refusing you, it's the internal contradiction that halts the flow. One part of you says, I want this. Another whispers, I don't believe I can have it. Or what if I lose it once I get it? Or even more subtly, if I get what I want, I'll have to change, and that terrifies me. This is the silent resistance that rides beneath our desires. It's subtle, almost invisible, because we don't think to look for it. After all, we feel the ache, the longing that must mean we're open to receiving, right? But no, not quite. Because desire, when it is tangled with resistance, becomes like trying to run with one foot nailed to the ground. You move in circles, exhausting yourself, wondering why the universe won't cooperate. But the universe is not confused, it's responding precisely to the totality of your vibration, the wanting and the resisting. So how do these two live together side by side in our inner world? It begins with our conditioning. From childhood, many of us are taught to be careful what we wish for, to not ask for too much, to stay humble, to not be greedy. And so we develop a strange relationship with desire. We want, but we feel guilty about wanting. We reach, but we fear being judged for reaching. We dream, but we fear failure or worse, success. And all of these layers compound over time until we are no longer quite sure whether we are pursuing our dreams or avoiding them. This is why sometimes, when the thing you desire gets close, you panic. You feel anxiety, self-sabotage kicks in, or you unconsciously push it away. Not because you don't want it, but because you've been resisting it all along. You see, it's not always external obstacles that stop you. Often, it's the inner conflict, the simultaneous yes and no, the forward and backward, the dual signals you send to life. The mind is incredibly clever at masking this. It tells you you're just being realistic, or cautious, or that you're not ready yet. But beneath those stories lies resistance, quietly holding back the tide. And none of this makes you wrong, it makes you human. It makes you layered, complex, beautifully paradoxical. You are not simply a machine that desires and achieves. You are a living process of being constantly evolving, shedding old beliefs, meeting new truths. So the real work is not in trying to force your desires into reality, but in becoming deeply honest with yourself. What part of you is afraid of getting what you want? What stories do you tell yourself about what it would mean? What identity would have to die if you actually received it? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are also liberating. Because the moment you stop pretending that you only want and start acknowledging that you also resist, a great tension begins to dissolve. You become whole again. You no longer have to fight yourself. And when wanting and resisting are brought into the light together, something miraculous happens. The resistance begins to lose its grip. Not because you've silenced it, but because you've heard it. You've allowed it to speak. You've met it with compassion rather than force. The coin, you see, does not need to be flipped to one side or the other. It needs to be understood. You are not here to conquer your resistance. You are here to understand it, to see what it's been trying to protect, and to invite it to come along with your desire instead of against it. In that union, in that reconciliation, something shifts. Wanting becomes clearer, softer, more open, and the world, sensing your alignment, begins to respond, not to the noise in your head, but to the clarity in your being. The trick is not in forcing reality, but in recognizing what you already chose. That might sound strange at first, for we are taught to believe that we are constantly making choices, that our lives are defined by action, by movement, by struggle, by the effort to shape the world according to our desires. From the moment we wake up to the time we fall asleep, we are encouraged to believe that we are in a battle with the chaos of reality, and it is only through willpower, strategy, and determination that we carve out a life worth living. But this is a very surface-level interpretation of existence. It assumes that reality is some separate object out there, and we are isolated subjects trying to change it. But look more deeply, and you will see that most of what happens in your life is not the product of conscious choice in the way you think it is. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your body. You didn't choose the early experiences that shaped your beliefs. And even now, as an adult, most of your so-called decisions are rooted in patterns and assumptions that were planted in you long ago. So what does it mean, then, to recognize what you already chose? It means beginning to see that life is not happening to you, or even because of you, but through you. That there is a much deeper level of you, call it the soul, call it consciousness, call it your true nature that is always making choices, but not in the way the thinking mind understands. This deeper you is not bound by time or logic. It doesn't operate in cause and effect. It speaks through intuition, through dreams, through repeated experiences, through longing and discomfort and synchronicity. And from that place, it chooses not in reaction, but in resonance. So when something difficult shows up in your life, an obstacle, a heartbreak, a failure, it is very easy to say, I did not choose this. I didn't want this. And from the level of your conscious personality, that may be true. But that deeper level of your being may have chosen it long ago, not for punishment, not for drama, but for transformation, for realization, for a kind of clarity that could only arise from that specific moment. And this is where we find the trick. Instead of trying to force reality to be different, to bend to your expectations or fears, you begin to look at what's here and say, in what way did I call this forth? What part of me needed to learn something through this? This is not about blaming yourself. It's not about shame or guilt. It's about reclaiming authorship of your experience. When you stop fighting what is, you gain the capacity to see why it is. Not as some abstract philosophical exercise, but as a direct knowing that life is responding to the texture of your inner world. And most of the time, the outer world is simply playing out a decision that's already been made somewhere within you. You may not have said yes to it with words. You may not have wanted it in the conventional sense. But some part of you leaned into it, aligned with it, chose it not as a destination, but as a doorway. The people who frustrate you, the cycles that repeat, the opportunities that slip away, even the dreams that keep returning, all of them are reflecting something you've set into motion. The question is not, how do I change this? The question is, why have I been creating this? And the moment you begin to ask that, not with judgment, but with sincerity, your relationship with reality changes. You begin to feel less like a victim of circumstance and more like a witness to a profound unfolding. You see that even your resistance, your denial, your confusion, those two are choices. Perhaps unconscious ones, perhaps inherited ones, but choices nonetheless. And the beautiful thing about this recognition is that it dissolves the compulsion to force. You no longer need to fight so hard to make things happen, because you begin to trust that what is happening is part of a larger intelligence. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means your action becomes aligned. You stop scrambling to fix what you never needed to fix. You stop chasing things that don't resonate. And you begin to move not from fear, not from lack, but from clarity, from awareness, from a deep intimacy with what is already true. And that truth reveals something astonishing, that most of the time what you've been trying to achieve is already here. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy trying to force a different version of reality into existence. But when you pause, when you look honestly at your life not as a mess to clean up, but as a message to interpret, you start to see the pattern, the intelligence, the quiet perfection behind even the chaos. And you realize that the trick was never to push harder, to manifest more, to hustle and grind and manipulate the flow of life. The trick was to recognize what you've already chosen and to meet it fully, to accept it not as defeat, but as alignment. And in that acceptance, you create space for something new, because only when you've truly seen the choice you already made can you begin to make a new one consciously, clearly with your whole being. The universe answers not to your lips, but to your state of being. This is something most people overlook, not because they're incapable of seeing it, but because they've been conditioned to believe in the power of words more than the power of presence. We've been taught to speak what we want into existence, to affirm, to declare, to chant and pray and manifest with language. And while there is a certain beauty in intention spoken aloud, the deeper truth is that the universe is not listening to what you say, it's responding to what you are, what you embody, what you carry in the silent, unseen parts of yourself when no one is watching. There is a kind of frequency that you emit, not through effort, but through the sum total of your beliefs, your feelings, your stories, your fears, and your trust. That frequency is your true communication. It speaks louder than your voice ever could. You may say, I want abundance, but if you live in a state of lack, always fearing not enough, always doubting your worthiness, then that's the signal you send. And the universe, like a perfect mirror, simply reflects it back to you, not out of judgment, not as punishment, but with complete and impartial clarity. You can speak of love all day long. You can write poems about it, pray for it, dream about it, but if deep down you believe love is unsafe, or that you are unworthy of being seen, or that intimacy always leads to pain, then you're being broadcast that belief. And what comes back to you will match it. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it is precise. It doesn't respond to surface-level intentions. It tunes into the core of your vibration. This is why so many people feel stuck. They speak the right words. They visualize, they make vision boards. They repeat affirmations, but nothing changes. And it's not because they're doing it wrong. It's because they're trying to talk over a frequency that has not been shifted. They're trying to convince life of something they haven't yet convinced themselves of. You can't just say, I am at peace, while living in a constant state of tension and fear. You can't say, I am enough, if your every action is designed to prove that you're not. The words are hollow unless they rise from a foundation